Hello everybody, today we're going to be looking at a handful of mods for the Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Links to the mods can be found in the description below, and please remember to support the original creators. The first mod we're going to be looking at is Relics of the Past Ancient Weapons by Heydo6. Unlike Heydo's previous mod that we looked at, you'll have to travel to the top right hand side of the map to the Ancient Tech Lab. And once we've reached the lab, we'll head to the cave underneath. Once in the cave, we'll find this Horoblin with some new bling. And once we've deprived him of said bling, we can have a look at some of the weapons the mod has introduced. Those first two items being the Ancient Shield Mark II and the Ancient Short Sword Mark II. But we'll go into more details about the weapons once we finish clearing out the cave. The next two Horoblins will have the Ancient Bladesaws Mark II and the Ancient Spear Mark II. And last, but most certainly not least, is this custom Hinox, who comes equipped with a rather outlandish necklace. And along with two of the previous items found on the Horoblins, you'll also find the Ancient Bow Mark II. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the enemy is a custom enemy, and is what I imagine a silver Hinox would look like. You may also recognise the eye, as I think it's the same one used for the marbled Gohma. Is it Gohma or Goma? Anyway, the Fire Temple boss. The biggest change with this enemy you'll notice is that it has 5,000 health. Now, to put that into perspective, a black Hinox has around 1,000 HP and a silver Lynel has 5,000. Which means this Hinox is not going down easy. And even after its defeat, it will still leave you with a bunch of enemies. Although I'm unsure if this is the Hinox's undigested lunch, its strange offspring, or if in reality the Hinox was actually 3 large chews and 2 keys in an elaborate outfit. But once they're dealt with, you'll find the Hinox dropped a star fragment and a sapphire. Now, a bunch of you may recognise the weapons from the Ancient Weapon mod that we covered a few videos ago. There's also a pretty good chance you'll remember them from Breath of the Wild. With this mod, however, you'll find the weapons have an altered colour scheme, which somewhat reflects their altered abilities. Now, the first weapon, the Bladesaws, does a total of 60 damage, and sets things on fire. The reason I didn't mention the stats earlier is because the weapons found in the wild can actually have the added effects / enhancement things. For example, my other Ancient Bladesaws has a total damage of 77. The Icy Blue Ancient Spear Mark II won't freeze your game, but will freeze your enemies, and do 46 damage. And to finish off the elemental trio, the Ancient Short Sword Mark II will electrocute your enemies. Our last weapon, the Ancient Bow Mark II, does a total of 25 damage and fires 3 arrows, along with its incredible range, although my particular version does fire 5 arrows. And the last item that can be found in the cave is the Ancient Shield Mark II, which, as far as I can tell, either has an incredibly low friction or some other effect that allows it to go shield surfing for a very long time. But the mod doesn't end there, and we also see changes to the Rizoka snowfield. The changes in question are fairly obvious, and we now find a bunch of enemies scattered around in the area, all of which with their own unique weapon combinations, along with some unique methods of transport. One enemy you'll want to avoid jumping on the back of is this Ancient Lynel, which now takes the place as the strongest Lynel in the game, and has a HP total of 9,000. Now, there is a handful of these Lynels scattered around the area, although there's only one with this particular shield. The shield being the Lynel Bladesaw shield, which looks just like the original Bladesaw. In other parts of the area you'll find a bunch of the other custom enemies, and some of the more elusive items from the base game. Now, if fighting the new custom enemies isn't really your cup of tea, you can travel to the Riverside Stable, in which Beedle will now sell the new items. Our next mod is Rito Link by ATK Supper. Now the first part of this mod, and the most obvious part of this mod, is that it changes Link's gliding animation. And now instead of using his paraglider, he simply uses his arms. But if Link wants to reignite his Rito ancestry, or at least his bird ancestry, he'll have to purchase a Snow Quill set. Now it is important to mention that this won't work on an upgraded Snow Quill set, so you will have to have a perfectly non-upgraded set. But now that's out of the way, Link can finally take flight. And when Link starts gliding with the Snow Quilt set equipped, he will start gaining altitude, which I think works by providing an updraft whenever Link is off the ground. While the height you gain is very useful, even on a full set of stamina you won't get too far. For things like exploring the connected sky islands and even the depths though, the mod works rather well. It's also great if you want to try and drop things on your enemies, which is something I didn't realise you could do until I started making this video. You'll have to be careful when using bomb flowers however, as the updraft will stop them from falling. Now as I mentioned earlier, upgrading any piece of the armor will stop the updraft effect. And if you've upgraded the set, you'll simply have to sell it and buy it back again. Or just simply add another version of the set via save editor. The last two mods we'll be looking at are Four Sword and Tunics of the Wind by GenericVideoGameNPC, which I commissioned to commemorate the end of my Tears of the Kingdom but there's 4 Link series. Now the Four Sword can be found in the Master Sword's pedestal right next to the Great Deku Tree. Just make sure you have enough room for it first. In terms of stats, the weapon does 50 damage and has an incredibly high durability, which means fuses aren't really necessary for the weapon to work effectively. Although fuses still can be used with the weapon, but in most cases will look slightly odd, with the exception being the fuses that modify the blade. The other mod, Tunics of the Wind Alts, changes the colour scheme of the Wind set to either red, blue, or purple, depending on which one you select. Now both of the mods in question aren't quite finished yet, and the hope is that the Tunic of the Wind set will be dyeable in the future, but we will be showcasing both mods once they've been updated. And that's all the mods we're going to be looking at today. Now in future videos we may see more videos like this where there are less mods per video, as people are now producing much larger Tears of the Kingdom mods, which is thanks to people getting more experience in making said mods and the improvement in tools. Anyway, links to the mods can be found in the description below and thank you for watching.